welcome everybody and welcome to the Pranary Game Changer event. We are talking to the founders of Koa Academy, Mark and Lauren Anderson. So Koa Academy is an online school, one of the fastest growing online schools in Africa. And Mark and Lauren started this school just a little over 18 months ago and grown it from one teacher to 20 teachers and 25 teachers, and from 25 students to over 200 students from different parts of Africa, which is super, super impressive. Welcome, Mark and Lauren.
Thanks for having us, Andres.
Great. And please give us the feedback if the audio is not great. I'll ask them to speak up.
Perfect.
All right. We start with Lauren. Tell us about your growing up. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up here in Cape Town, in a town called Somerset West, just outside Cape Town. And my background is actually in nursing, so in healthcare, which is very different to where I've ended up now. But I've always loved working more in systems or in leadership. So I only ever worked for a year in a hospital and then moved into more health systems and working in public health. So I've always loved starting new projects, launching projects, and the different moving parts that those bring along with it.
Fantastic. And Mark, where did you grow up? What type of kid were you?
What type of kid was I? Oh, we're getting into it now.
We've got some family on the call, so you better be truthful.
I'm going to give my recap of what I said just now that my audio's on. When I make that same joke, you guys have to laugh like you did the first time round. So I grew up in Zimbabwe, was born there, and growing up there I always had a love for teaching and always wanted to be a teacher. Didn't know exactly what form that would take, what shape it would take, but when I came down to South Africa to study at the University of Cape Town, I got my teacher's degree and then went back up to Zim and taught at a boarding school there, which is obviously very different to where we are now, but learned a lot from some really experienced educators and got some great exposure there. Then came back down here and carried on teaching and met Lauren, and that's where my life changed for the better.
Yes, right on cue.
Perfect.
Right. And now we fast forward to you're working as a nurse, you're working as a teacher. Tell us about the transition. Like, at what point did you think that you wanted to build your own company?
Yeah.
It probably started when we started dating.
Yeah, early
days. Early days, we used to, we always find driving in a car is a great time to chat through sort of blue sky ideas and to dream. And we would find ourselves led back to talking about one day, being able to start something. And we loved the idea of online education. So even within nursing and within healthcare, I moved into an educational space where we were starting to do a lot of sort of exploring in the online educational space, and just loved the idea that you could train healthcare workers who are working super remotely and bring them the most up-to-date, world-class information, no matter where they were. And Mark was doing some similar things in education. We used to have conversations just about how we love the online space for educating people, how we really said we felt like it hadn't been tapped into in the way that it could be. And so we used to, I think when we were dating, the car trips, we used to sit sort of dreaming up this idea. We then also went through stages where the two of us have a number of URLs to our name, where we would come up with business ideas and go and then get home and go and buy the URL because we'd named our business that we were going to name. We used to every now and then have dates that were meetings where we would take minutes and agendas and stuff. Wow. And we would have action items like linked deadlines and things. And this was all just starting to look through things like learning management systems and things that we could put together. So it really has been something for years and years that excites us. and has excited us, and we never knew what it would end up looking like. And then I think, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about just educationally, like that's more the...
I mean, for me in education, and Lauren says we've both got an eye for systems. So we're the type of people that will go to the pharmacy, and walking away from the pharmacy will be like, man, if we could have 2 hours with the people who run that pharmacy, you can get through twice as many people. So whatever we're doing, we're always thinking about the systems behind it and how it's running. And so for me as an educator, I naturally wanted to be in school management where I could influence how the school was being run. And so I used to have this file on my computer called School 2.0.
Yeah.
And after school, I'd sit and I'd open it up and I'd draft imaginary policies for an imaginary school. And my thinking was, imagine if there were no restraints. Imagine if there were no geographic constraints, no resource constraints. What would learning look like for kids, for families, for teachers that would make sense? Because a lot of how schools work, I mean, we know that education is broken in a lot of ways. We know that the current education system is built for the 40s and 50s and hasn't changed significantly over the last half a century. So we all know that something's wrong, but what would it look like if there were no rules? And so I used to draft these imaginary policies and then try and use those to shape what I was doing in school in significant ways. But like Lauren says, we always also had an interest in online education, and I think when the pandemic pushed us all into the online space, I think the penny dropped for us and we suddenly went, School 2.0 is an online school, and all of those constraints just fell away. And the penny dropped for us, and I think the penny dropped for a lot of parents as well, to go, there's increased appetite to have our kids in our space doing their education at home, and the marriage of those two was just the perfect storm.
I think that's incredible, because I know that a lot of people know that the education system doesn't work, right? Like you're saying, oh yeah, university, what you learn, like hardly apply it. But it's still like, but that's the only system that's there and recognized. So I still want my kids to go to university, even if I know like, but it's almost like the security thing. Like you have people like Seth Godin is reading the manifesto on how education should be, how it's broken. Peter Thiel, for instance, also talks about how the current education system doesn't work, right? And a lot of people know that it's almost like religion, by the way. It's like, how high up the hierarchy are you to change things? Right? Like, no, you can't change it. You're not qualified enough. But to be qualified enough, you need to follow the same system. And then you can't say what you think because nobody higher up has said it. It's like, okay, I know it could work differently, but you don't have the authority. But what you've done is pretty amazing, because you have used some of the things that would follow that, but still change the game completely. Tell us about your Koa system, which is changing the game.
I think before Lauren, I think she'll be a lot more insightful, but one of the things that I'll say is, one of the real challenges that we've had in the process is doing something that's so different to what's happening already. So differentiating ourselves in a massive way, but at the same time being able to communicate to people what we're doing in a way that they understand. So when you present something to them that's so different that they have no framework for how you're operating or how you're working, it's not helpful. They always kind of go, so are you a school then?
And I think of people wanting the security, knowing that your child will be able to go to university is really important, whether, as you say, whether you think it's the best route or not. Knowing that they'll get there is really important, and it's been similar for us, just in explaining what it is that we're doing.
So I mean, an example of that is when we started the process, we decided we're not going to take all of the systems and structures that we think make a school a school and just deploy them by default. We want to evaluate, does this actually make sense with what we're doing? And one of the things that just didn't make sense was standardized timetables for everyone. Where you get together and at 8 o'clock everybody's doing maths for an hour, and then at 9 o'clock everybody's doing geography for an hour. That just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to do that in the online space, doesn't make sense for learning. And so we thought we're going to do away with standardized timetables and we're going to call them something else. We're going to call them, here's your personalized work playlist. So here's your playlist. And so we talked about playlists and we presented playlists to the kids and playlists to the parents. And playlists to the, and everybody went, we don't get it. And so now we call them timetables.
They're still personalized.
But now you say to somebody, here's your individualized timetable. And they go, okay, cool. I get it. Yeah.
You know, what you're saying is interesting. That I've been working with a program called Jusseri of Alan Gray Philanthropies, but one of those programs is for entrepreneurship for kids, right? And it's a game. So they're using that here in South Africa, but it's being done there in East Africa. But when you're telling parents that, oh, your kid's going to be playing games, like, games, no ways. No. So with that, it's interesting that say, playlist, like, no. It needs to be a timetable. Yeah. Now tell us about about your growth, and then I'll also maybe talk about the starting, or maybe we start. Let's start from the beginning.
Start with the start.
Yes. Tell us now about that point when saying, like, few steps before the birth of Koa. What was happening? What happened then?
So I think when, as Mark said, when COVID came and suddenly there was more appetite for online learning, we started going, okay, well, actually we want to move ahead with this now. And to begin with, we decided we'd just start up something on the side. We were both working full-time and we were going to start something on the side. I wanted to do online antenatal classes and Mark was going to do online science classes.
It's one of our domains, by the way. It's Science Faction.
Science Faction. We own that URL, that domain. And so we actually put this together as a business plan and we submitted it to see if we could get funding to start this, which was when we were directed to Pranary. And we then did the Pranary course, and I think one of the first things that we got told was, like, this is way too wide to have a antenatal online classes mixed with science extra lessons. It was clearly not quite. And so I think the process then started of like going, well, what do we actually want to be doing? And very quickly realized that it was an online school.
Yeah. And I think for us, a big part of the journey was we had a passion and an interest and a skill set to bring to the table, but we didn't know how to get from there to a functioning business that can stand on its own 2 feet.
Yeah.
You know, we don't consider ourselves business trained. We don't consider ourselves entrepreneurial by spirit. We knew that we had a passion and a skill set, and we wanted to make it a reality. So, like Lauren says, step one, you find Pranary, and you sign up with Pranary. Because honestly, going to those, and we kind of went into that going, we know that this is going to be the bridge for us into making this a reality. So. First of all, we got to be wholeheartedly into this thing. Yeah. We're not going to go into this half-heartedly because we're not going to get enough out of it. So really test whether this is going to hold water. Yeah. And the second thing is we let it be our watershed moment, where we said we'll go through this process with Pranary for 3 months, and at the end of this process, based on our experience of it and people's feedback to us at the end of this, we'll know whether we're going to put all our eggs in this basket and I resign as an associate principal with 5 children signed up, or, are we going to go back to what we know is actually secure? Because we left secure jobs in the middle of COVID.
And then Sandra convinced us after 4 weeks to already set up our website and get going and find customers, not even at the end of it.
That's right, yeah.
I remember that moment because it was, you said, oh yeah, we'll launch next year because of when school starts. Yeah. But it's like, no, you're launching next week. Yeah. How was that?
I think it was about, what month was it? About August. And we said we're gonna launch in January, and we want to sort of sign up 10 kids in January. And Sandra, you said no, you're launching next week, and you have to have 5 signed up by the end of next week. Otherwise, don't come back. So we did. I think it was a valuable lesson for us that you build while you're flying, And actually, that's a great way to test and prove what you're doing while you're doing it. Yeah.
And it was just amazing once we started talking through what it was that we wanted to do, the number of people that already said, yes, we're in, sign us up, we're joining.
And the key thing there is you tell somebody about an idea that you have. Everybody says, great idea. Nobody's going to say to you that's a bad idea. No one is that cold-hearted.
Yeah, exactly.
But you say to somebody, sign up.
Yes.
And now you find out what they really think of your business idea. And so that decision of pushing us into open up your signups was for us a game changer, because now people aren't just saying lovely idea and we're thinking this is going to make it for sure.
Yeah.
But actually, no, people are actually signing up. And if we can see that, then actually we know that it's going to hold water.
That's I think that's incredible, because that's something that as Pranary we're doing to change the game. Because I've been, whether invited as a trainer or a facilitator or as a mentor in some programs where validation takes a year or half a year, right? Or ideation is like 6 months and all of that. Like, why is it that long, right? And then we did it with the way you validated that within a week. And already, if people are saying, yeah, great idea, when it's coming to sign up, they don't, then you think, then you ask them, like, why wouldn't you sign up? Then they give you feedback. Where it's like, oh, I don't want my kid in the house, or I don't want this, I don't want that. And I see that from your business, when you did that, then you actually learned some of the things you needed to put in place. Like,
Yeah, I mean, our ideas for what Koa would be changed so drastically in those 3 months.
Yeah.
They took shape so quickly, and it was exactly on the back of people telling us what they really thought of the experiences. And some of it is finding out why people don't want to do online learning. And some of it is take what you're doing and test parts of it. You don't have to test the whole thing. You don't have to have an online school up and running. You can say, well, what's one of the key elements of this is going to be, for us, the way that we do content subject teaching is quite different. We call it our engaged task section. So let's design 1 or 2 engaged tasks and get some people to run it, and then get feedback immediately on just that component. And then let's test this part, and then let's test this part.
And I think another thing that a lot of people don't get is that when you're starting out, you're an edtech company, you think that, we're going to build, right? You're emphasizing the building, the technology, hiring lots of tech people, but thinking that in itself is the business, that people are coming to you and say, oh, is your school written in Python or Java? It's like,
In Google?
Google, right? What was your experience for you in terms of using existing systems to launch quickly and getting to actually talk to investors and investors saying,
this was actually one of the things that we spoke about yesterday when we were talking about coming here and going, I think this was one of the things that got us to move quickly, was not spending a lot early on platforms or on actually developing apps. So if you want to talk a little bit about what we
So I mean,
do.
you were one of the people who gave us that advice, and another one was actually we had sit-down conversations with a lot of people who we knew already from other connections and networks, where we could ask really insightful questions to people who are in specific industries. So we sat down and we said, okay, a crucial part of Koa is going to be the tech side of things, right? So we sat down with a software developer who we really knew was top of his game, trustworthy, and we said, can we just have an hour of your time? Fired off a bunch of questions, and he basically said what you said now, which is, look, you can either spend millions of rand developing your own platform and building your own app and your own software, or you can sign up for 10 or 12 solutions which already exist that are either free or very cheap, but do that thing very, very well. And they might not do all of the things that you need to do, but if you can find all of those solutions, get up and going on them, and then later on, if you want to build in parts of your own custom-wise, then that's doable. But start with the quick wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Now tell us to end of 3 months, raising the first round. What was that experience like, and what are the things that convinced investors to say, we think we're on to something?
So I think one of the things that I would say about this is we feel incredibly fortunate, incredibly blessed to be in the position that we're in, to even pitch. We know that we're passionate about what we're doing. We certainly don't think that we're the smartest people in the room. And so having the opportunity to pitch, I would say just going through the process, even if we got to the end of that and didn't get investment, we had conversations towards the end of that 3 months going, this process was worth it. And for us, the value was in that process. When we get to the end of that process and we don't get investment, it's still worthwhile. It's still worth the time and the investment that we put into that 3 months because of the personal growth that we experienced, what we learned through it. I mean, you look at where we started at the beginning of that 3 months and where we ended. Even if we hadn't got investment and Koa had never happened, we still would have chosen that 3 months and felt like it was, a real personal investment. I think one of the things that was significant for me in that process was the investment that we got in the end was partly connected to our idea and was partly connected to the traction that we got. But I think a lot of it was also just connected to they believed us and they bought into us because we bought into what we were doing. We weren't trying to sell an idea that we're actually not interested in or passionate about or skilled in. We weren't trying to push a quick sale to get investment to jump onto the next thing. We actually really believe in what we're doing. So much so that we were willing to, leave our job and jump in. And I think that's very attractive to people who have the resources to investors. They look at the idea, but they look really hard at the people and go, is this the type of person that I want to invest in? And do they believe in what they're doing?
Fantastic. And tell us about that growth now after Koa has launched. What were some of the lessons and what would be some of the tips you would give people saying, this is how we grew? Initially, we were planning to grow like this, but we changed based on the feedback and we learned to grow like this instead. What made you grow fast within such a short space of time?
So I think that to begin with, it was a lot. I think we grew mostly through word of mouth and people enjoying what we did, people that we knew that joined, and then through word of mouth. Our best moments were when people applied that we had never met before. I still remember that moment that someone applied to our school that we didn't know at all. It was such a great moment.
The first one, we were like, they must be from a competitor.
They're just trying to check out what
they're not genuine.
But we grew quite fast in the beginning. So we launched with 5 students, and then sort of after a month, I think we had 12, and we employed our first teacher, and then just had sort of consistent growth during the year. Sort of each term we would grow fairly well. And I think we got to the end of the year sitting on about 30, so still fairly small at that point, but I'd been showing consistent growth each month. And then I'll never forget the meeting that we had with our business team and our advisors, where they were saying to us, right, for next year, because January is obviously the year where you expand the most. And we had that moment of going, if we want to make it and if we want to get our next round of investment, we need to make sure that we grow substantially in January. And we were having discussions about what to spend on our marketing. And we'd sort of figured out by then sort of where our best marketing avenues were and where we could spend, and we were most likely to get return on that spend. And we were sitting there going but if we spend too much, we're not going to be able to carry on for long enough. And they kept saying to us, but if you don't spend, you're not going to be able to carry on for that much longer. And that analogy that they gave us of, what was it with getting...
A rocket ship, You're either going to get out of the atmosphere and, burn full thrusters and make it or not make it in 6 months, or you're going to burn quarter thrusters and it's going to take you 5 years to very slowly die.
And so we'd realized by that point that really what we had was something amazing. The feedback that we'd got from the parents and the students was so encouraging. We had grown really well, and we really at that stage really believed that what we were doing was making a difference, and it was something really exciting to be part of. So at that point we knew that the concept was there was really an appetite for the concept, but it was being able to get the concept out there. And so we made the decision to, want to say quadruple our marketing spend.
Yeah,
I think
one
it was,
month,
and we we went for it, knowing that if this doesn't work, we're going to crash quite soon afterwards as well. And it was the most amazing experience of just pushing that marketing spend, and the enrollments just came in, and we've since then. Just
Always
gone
been ahead
above,
of targets,
always
Yeah.
been ahead of our
That's
targets. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so
And-
from that
Yeah.
turning point, and I think
Yeah.
the idea is, are you pushing money into things that aren't going to drive your revenue,
yes.
or building a nicer, fancier, whatever
Yeah.
it is, but not actually moving you forward,
Yes.
or are you investing in what's going to move your business forward? Yeah.
And in this case, because a lot of people, they're thinking right now, I'm guessing that I've done what you're talking about. I've also spent like triple the money, but it just went into the Facebook and Google black hole.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
and then nothing. So what practically did you do, and which avenues worked for you, and why, and what were the lessons there? Like, what
Yeah.
up? Yeah.
There were many avenues that we.
And many lessons.
Yes.
And I think before we give any specific practicals, I think this is one of the things that I wanted to share from my own personal experience in this journey is that idea of we're passionate about something and we're very invested in it, but we hold to our picture of what it should be quite loosely.
Yeah.
And when something's not working, it's foolish to, but this is how I've always imagined it's going to be, or don't tell me that I'm not doing it the way that people want it. People must just buy into my vision. I think being flexible and light on your feet is so important, and not being sensitive to feedback.
Yeah.
I think we're by default with people in general are quite sensitive to feedback. I know I always was, and had to consciously make the decision, I'm going to pursue feedback and intentionally make decisions to change what we're doing as quickly as we can.
Yeah. So we have probably sort of our three things that we hang on to. The one is that we are an engaging online school. So I think when we were doing our market research in the beginning, one of the biggest things that people said they didn't like about online school was a disengagement that they felt either towards, students would say towards their peers, parents would say they don't know what their child is doing. Are they just sitting playing Fortnite or games in their room? Teachers going like, oh, I don't really feel like I know like where my students are at. So our big thing is we've capped our classes at 8. So every time the students get together, there are only 8 students together on the screen. And we have cameras on, mics on policy, and so everybody gets to know each other. Super high accountability. We track work that parents can see sort of every day where their child is on their different platforms and what they're doing. So engagement was our one really big thing that drives so many of our decisions in how we decide to do things. So hanging on to that. And then the other two is our name being Koa. It's a type of tree. And the tree is known for being really flexible and really strong. So often if you get people that have got wedding bands that are made out of wood, it's made out of a koa wood, or musical instruments are also often made out of koa wood. And what they're known for is being really strong, but then at the same time flexible. So those sort of three things are the three things that we're holding on to, is that sort of the strength in terms of being academically robust and strong, but then at the same time being flexible, and that thing of light on our feet, changing with feedback that we get, and moving forward in that way.
Yeah.
I don't know that we answered your question that you asked at all.
I think there's one specific learning that I've had as we've looked to grow and learn, which is I think a lot of times my instinct was to try and incentivize or discount people on the outside to sign up to Koa. Mm-hmm. And one of the learnings we had was focus on the people that you've got, and your customers right now, and take the investment that you would have put into, let's say, discounts for signing up or incentives for signing up, and put them into the people that you've got now, and then they become multipliers of who you are and what you're doing. And we've had, especially in the early days, so when Lauren was talking now about going from 20 to 30 kids to 50 kids to 100 kids, that part of the curve there, more than anything, was people in Koa telling other people about Koa.
That's super powerful. I think it answers it, because that, like, if you have 20 people and each just tell one other person, you move to 40, and then each one, then it's 80, and then moves to 160, and it grows exponentially like that. But it's something that people discount so much that actually we can grow this community by just saying, hey, could you bring one other person next time, right? And then it moves, and then you don't have to spend as much money. But also, when people see your name, whether it's in digital marketing or wherever, they would have heard about it from somebody else, and maybe they went to your site once, and then now your ad starts following them everywhere. Right? But also you've had events in Cape Town and Joburg. Tell us about that experience, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So the people watching from Lusaka, Nairobi, and Kigali, and also here in Cape Town, you can ask your questions. You can type the questions in the chat box, and the people here have got the privilege of just asking live.
So events was the question.
Yes.
So we've done a real range of events. We were having a bit of a chuckle before we started this because our very first ever Koa event was an online webinar to find out about this brand new thing, Koa. And we had zero marketing budget. So we just posted it on social media.
Put all our pocket money into it.
And 2 people signed up for that webinar, our first ever Koa webinar, and it was my parents. So, and I'll have you know they were 20 minutes late for the webinar as well. So, but that's where you start, and kind of from there we've tried a few different types of events and engagements, and different events and engagements work obviously for different purposes. The way we've kind of gone with a lot of them is just helping people to engage and connect with each other in meaningful ways to them, and not necessarily make it about us and what we're doing. So when we have social events, for example, we run quarterly social events in all the major centers for our families. And at those, all we're really trying to do is give them an opportunity to connect with each other, because that thing of engagement is so important to us. We don't necessarily want to have a Koa agenda or make it about marketing or make it about bringing people in for sales, or we actually just want to give them a platform to connect with each other, and because engagement's important to us.
And then I think the one other type of event that we have held that is specifically for marketing is what we call looking in events, and that's quite often when someone in the school says they know of a whole lot of people in their area that are interested, and we'll then fly up and host an event there. And those have been really successful, often not straight away, but they have often led to like a few sign-ups and sort of like steps away. And I think a thing of when people meet us in person and get to hear the real heart behind what it is that we're doing. That's also really good.
And I would say just anecdotally, probably the ideal number that we've found with those is about 5. If you have more than 5 people in the conversation, people don't ask individualized questions. They don't ask about their child who's in grade 9 who's wants to be a dancer. They sort of just hear the general story of Koa, but they don't get personally invested in the conversation. And less than that, you don't have enough diversity in the conversation. So we found when there are 1 or 2 who want to engage with us, we say, great, let's try and get 2 or 3 others together, and then sort of 5 together in the room is an awesome number to do a looking in event.
Good to know. We know that. Thank you. We'll take questions from the audience. My question to you, while we're waiting for that, we can take questions, huh? What is it like working with a spouse?
Oh, great question. I'm going to let Lauren answer this.
Perfect. That's how you work with a spouse.
You want the real answer?
Yes, I want the real answer. And then there's a question there.
All right.
Sorry, was there a question?
It has been, the most amazing sort of experience overall. I must say, I think the first 6 months was rough, and we had to work a lot out. I think things like we work from home, so we finish in the office and then we go to our lounge, and we're still the exact same people that have just like been sitting in a meeting together. And I soon got to the point where I realized that I could verbalize to him, like, I'm really angry with the Mark that I work with at the moment. But I really enjoy Mark, my husband. And we had a few of those moments of needing to separate the two, and then actually being able to get over it and carry on. But we've got to the point now where I think we've really learnt, obviously a lot more about each other and what each other's strengths and weaknesses are. And that sounds a little cliche, but it really has been learning how to leverage each other's strengths and support each other in that.
You've got to be intentional about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to be intentional about figuring each other out and getting the best out of each other. And
you can't leave it to chance.
No.
For everything else, people go for training, but with handling relationships, and whether it's kids or siblings, people don't train, don't study.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Andres. Lauren, Mark, thanks very much for the insights. So for me, what's really interesting is how did you go about your pitch, preparing the slides, preparing the pitch, preparing the growth strategy for the next 5 years, that thumbsuck figure? Where did all that information come from? Did you do it yourselves? Did you have guidance? Because you keep on having to do pitches that are very particular to the kind of investor that you're pitching to.
Go first.
So I think we pitched over the course of those 3 months. We probably pitched about 8 or 9 times. We tried to pitch as often as we could, and I think one of the temptations for me while I was going through the process was to not pitch the next week if I felt like I had nothing new to pitch, because I'd pitch on a Friday with Sandras to a group of potential investors, and I'd get some feedback, and then maybe the feedback didn't resonate with me, or there wasn't a lot of feedback, and then the following Friday I wouldn't have a lot more to go on. Pitch again. And Sandras would always say to us, pitch again. I say, I don't have a lot that's new, or I haven't had time to work on my slides, It's only been a week and I've actually got a full-time job. And he said, pitch again. And you pitch again on that Friday, and you have somebody else who's sitting in the room who brings something out of your presentation that you'd never noticed before. And for me personally, never having pitched before this experience was eye-opening to hear somebody say to me, you focused on that, but you've actually missed the point entirely. You need to focus on this. And
some of that feedback was harsh, but it was so helpful. So it was almost the demo pitching beforehand. I remember the one time we were told you sound too apologetic in what you're doing, and it stands out so much to us because our strategy after that changed completely, and it made our pitch so much better. So the thing of practicing it, in terms of the numbers and all of that, I think we just did. Google. A lot of Googling.
and talking to people who know more than you.
Absolutely. We have done a lot of that.
We've got 3 or 4 guys, some of them are family, some of them are friends, who know more than us in certain areas, and we just phone them and say, give me an hour and explain to me. The person who I pitched to on Friday used a word, I've heard it before, but I don't know what it means. Can you give me an hour and you just explain to me how it works and what it means?
And something that we've done is to bring in other people, different people from different parts of the world, and they all have different expertise, but they always give feedback.
We've got a question from Nicole. She said, word of mouth is powerful, but which marketing channel did you find was the most successful?
Oh, good question. Hi, Nicole. I think for us, one of the things that we've learned is Facebook is not as effective as it used to be. I think in the early days for us, and I don't know if this is true for all industries, but for us, Facebook was effective in the very early days when who we're trying to leverage are either people who we know or people who they know. But as soon as you've sort of maximized that group of people, we haven't found Facebook particularly helpful. For us, we found our
Google Ads
to be the most effective.
As soon as we increase our Google Ads spending, our number of enrollments shoots up as well. And I think we were actually talking a little bit about this earlier. I think for us, one of the reasons that that's worked is because in the last 2 years is obviously when online schools have taken off. And so it's been in one way fortunate for us, in another way not as fortunate, having other big names come out at the same time. And even though that was quite like difficult for us when other big names came out. Actually, if we look at it now, we're so thankful that they did, because suddenly you just saw about online schools all over, and then you had a lot more people Googling online school, and then we came up as well as one of your options, and
the space.
validated the space, and brought and meant that a lot more people were searching for us specifically.
This is something that, Sandris, when we were doing our Pranary sessions with you, you brought up a couple times, which is stop seeing your major competitors as only competitors. Start thinking about, can you position yourself slightly differently to either have them as validators of what you're doing, or somehow they become multipliers for you, where they're no longer a competitor, maybe they're a reseller for what you're doing.
And I think one of the other things as well, linked to Nicole's question, is we also went and found every single like free space that we could be advertising in the school arena. So we were on like SA homeschoolers, and we would just Google literally like what are the spaces that are out there that we could possibly be on. And I mean, that was more just getting a brand awareness out there. So working on both brand awareness and then the targeted marketing.
Essentially, if I'm understanding the question, is you've got a full-time job, you're trying to market what you're doing. You're also trying to get this thing up and running. You've only got 5 learners. You don't have the revenue coming in to be able to even pay yourself, never mind put into marketing. Do you leave your job? Do you do this while you're doing your job? How do you find that balance?
When you're putting out there, you know it's not perhaps the best thing. You might be messing up the next customer.
Yes.
Because you don't have
So pretty much saying, again, like, do you want to launch something that's not perfect?
That's not perfect, yeah. Especially, Faisal, with education. You know, we're not selling, a T-shirt where if it doesn't work, you just buy another T-shirt. This is your child's education. Yeah, it's a big deal. Do you want to say? So I think one of Sandra, do you want to answer this question? I think one of the things you'll find is that because it's my family and it's my work, I'm a lot more cautious. And those are the conversations with Sandris going, make it happen. You don't wait until January. Open your sales now. And I'm thinking to myself, what if people buy it? It's a terrifying thought to think, I really want to sell this thing, but what if people buy it? Then I actually have to action this. And it was a very difficult transition period for us, where you're working a full-time job and you're doing proof of concept and you're taking a salary knock as soon as you make that transition. I mean, we had to make the decision. We knew for us it was going to be a significant salary knock for a while. And it's going to be, you're not sleeping for a while. And we kind of decided, well, we're going to go for that because this is our shock for it. And making that decision means that you're all in. For us, fortunately, through the Pranary process, when we got to the end of that, we had enough pre-seed funding for me to be able to resign, take a bit of a salary knock, and give it 6 months. So we knew, if this is just me with the 5 kids and it never goes beyond that, we always knew we would need at least a 3-month off-ramp for those families in those early days. And obviously, the people who sign up for something like this in those early days, they're gung-ho. I mean, almost all of them were entrepreneurial type people themselves, who know the risks. And so for us, it was about, well, we've got that 6-month window to give this a really good go. And we saw that growth in those first 6 months. We knew we've got to go at this hard in those first 6 months. And we did. And then the seed funding then came in soon after.
And Mark himself, being an educator, was the teacher that was teaching them as well. But then we very soon brought on another teacher as well.
And we leveraged a lot of people in those first 6 months. We leveraged a lot of people who we knew from our networks who could help us without us paying them. So one of the things as an educator I wanted to know is, do our educational programs meet special educational needs? Because that's significant to me as an educator. So I know somebody who works in Norway, fantastic educator who specializes in that. So I just sent her all of her stuff and said, will you take a month, go through this in your own time, and then give me a report on it? She did it for free for us. And that's the sort of thing that we could have paid 60, 70 grand on.
What lessons have you learned about pacing yourself in terms of sometimes you send out an email, you get crickets, 0. Or You send out an email and you get a lot of people responding. So that's the question from Daisy.
Do you want to go?
Go for it.
So I think a couple things come to mind for me here. The one is Michael Owen, a great Liverpool football player who we all know and love. Quiet in the room, eh? But he went for about 9 months without scoring and then scored a hat-trick in a game. And in the interview after the game, the interviewer was like, "You must be on top of the world." And his response was, when you go for 9 months without scoring, you have to convince yourself that you're not the worst player in the world. And when you score a hat-trick in a game, you've got to convince yourself that you're not the best either. And I think that for us we've had a whole bunch of people sign up this week and then we've had no one sign up for a month. That up and down, I mean, in the beginning, is such an emotional roller coaster. And you kind of just have to take the knocks and take the wins as levelly as you can. And don't see it as a short-term process. We really had to go, we're not looking at this week's numbers, we're looking at over the course of a longer period of time, what is the trend doing?
And it's so true. I remember the beginning days, we would say often, this is an emotional roller coaster. And I don't think we've actually said it in months now.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of get used to the ups and downs a little bit later. I'm sure they'll come again, but for for right now, we haven't.
And you sort of, in your first hires for us were crucial. So
Yeah.
with those big jumps in learner numbers, we had to have the right people around us that when we suddenly tripled our class size, we could handle that. Because we had the right people on the team. Yeah.
To Melo, the question. The question is, how do you choose your metrics?
Yeah.
So metrics people can have lots of metrics.
Yeah.
You're getting confused. Like, which one is the one that moves the needle? For you, how did you choose your metrics and what metrics do you look at?
So I think part of our process that has just been incredibly helpful, and I know we wouldn't be where we are without it, is the the group through Enigma, so through our investors that we meet with. So everybody that they invest in, we have monthly meetings with them, and they've walked us through the different metrics that we should be looking at. And we've had retreats that we've gone on where they've really taken us through the metrics that investors look at. I know that there are many of those metrics. I think for us, one of the moments that was the most helpful was looking at the metrics that Series A funders look at and sort of bringing it down to, I think there were about 5 of those metrics. That you look at, and so really focusing on those ones, going, we know that these are the metrics that investors are going to be looking at. So it's the 20% growth a month.
Yeah.
I should be able to rattle all of them off, but I'm going to.
You don't have to.
I don't have to, thank you.
Refer back to that.
Just go to Pranary, yeah.
So, but having that group of people that are have been through it and are sort of investing in us, not just financially, but also really in the business and guiding us in that. Because as Mark said, when we started off on this, we're a teacher and a nurse. We have learned, the amount that we have learned in the last 18 months is
Simon's in the room,
amazing.
don't be too apologetic.
You're a teacher and nurse. You didn't say you're actually a nurse educator, right?
Yeah. So I would
critical.
add one thing very quickly on that, which is for us, we really value feedback from the people who are in our community. And for us, there's a lot of value in the ones that you have to turn from qualitative and quantitative data. And so we love asking our families very open-ended questions that let them say whatever they want to say. So if we ask very specific questions and only look at very specific numbers, sometimes we can miss important information. But asking a customer, what's the thing you enjoy the least about our school? You get information that you weren't looking for.
Yeah, great. To that, I can just add that for a lot of organizations, they say, don't bring me problems, bring me
Solutions.
right? That's a recipe for disaster. Like, your people won't tell you that there's a leak, right? They won't tell you there's a problem because, like, if I say, like, I don't have a solution, just keep quiet. So you keep shutting down feedback within your teams, within your community, and within that. So ask people, bring me all your problems. And it's really, really critical. That's how big organization gets disrupted. Not that the people they hired are not smart, and they are smart, but it's almost like, what you're saying, what's the solution? Give me a business plan, give me this, give me that. In other words, shut that. up, right? And then life goes on. Right. So thank you very much to Mark and Lauren. A big hand to Mark and Lauren.